or the run rules on the diamond at Lowe's Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go!
Let's go. It's the Mainline Podcast. He's Tyler Burton. I'm Adam Jaquez. We're doing a live show tonight on YouTube. If you're catching the podcast later on, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube so you don't miss out in the future. But Tyler, we're coming off a really bad 2-week stretch of OU football, 2 losses in a row at Kansas, at Oklahoma State. We're going to dive into some tough questions. It's probably not going to be the most fun show, but we need a little bit of therapy. Tyler, how are you doing this evening?
Mixed emotions, Adam. Obviously, I'm kind of glad that we chose to do this podcast 48 hours after the football game. I know that we had talked about doing kind of a rapid reaction once you got home from Stillwater on Saturday night. Probably a good thing. We kind of let the dust settle. We've slept on it a couple of times, and we both had a chance to go back and watch this game again. But yeah, it's not good, Adam. What a difference 3 weeks make. Obviously, coming out of the Cotton Bowl, you've got the victory over Texas. OU moves to 6-0. Everybody's talking college football playoff, this being a top 5 team. And then, we have a bye week that I think a lot of people thought was, coming at the absolute perfect time. It was going to give everybody a chance to kind of recalibrate, come down from that high after the Texas win. You can kind of refocus and move forward into the back half of the season. And, starting with the UCF game, moving forward to Kansas and Oklahoma State, obviously, this is an Oklahoma football team that is completely unrecognizable from what we've seen through the first 6 weeks of the season. It almost looks like we've reverted back to Team 128 from a year ago with the penalties, the turnovers, lack of discipline in key areas, the inability to execute in key stretches of the game when it matters the most. Yeah, there's a lot to dive into, Adam. It's not good right now in Norman, Oklahoma, I can tell you that. Let's
start right at the top with the officiating. Tyler, I think you're probably on the same page that I am here in that none of the calls were really good. Like the Brent Venables penalty, the pass interference on Makari Vickers before that, the non-call on Drake Stoops. There may have been others that people are thinking about. None of those calls were good. But at the end of the day, OU should have had a 2-score lead, a 3-score lead, and it should have not mattered whatsoever. And that's kind of the case, really, for OU over the last, not just the last 3 years of, when we've known that OU is going to go to the SEC and then the conspiracy theories come out. I don't buy it whatsoever. I don't think the refs are actually that invested in anything like that. I don't think it really matters to them. But we've seen this for years and years. The Big 12 has not had the best officials in the country by any stretch. So there's lots of bad calls. They go both ways against both teams. But OU's just not good enough to, have to rely on the ref to make the call at the end of the game. And that's kind of the sad reality. And Brent mentioned this too, in that, hey, like the margin of error for this team is really small. And he said that, very quickly in his post-game press conference after the loss in Stillwater. And my thought immediately was, well, coach, don't contribute to that error by getting those penalties yourself. Now, I know what he did probably doesn't warrant it. I don't think that was worth a penalty. But this is like the 4th time this year that the coaching staff has gotten a penalty. So he should be on high alert that, hey, you got to... you have to make your case to the officials, but you also can't. You have to be very careful, I guess, considering that this is the 4th time this year that you've gotten a penalty.
Well, Adam, anytime that you lose the turnover battle 3-1, anytime that you're the more penalized team, 8 penalties compared to 5, the margin for error, especially when you're going on the road, is razor thin. And Oklahoma just simply didn't do themselves any favors with the lack of execution on offense, through the better part of the second quarter all the way up until midway through the fourth quarter, just in terms of being able to get anything going and, be able to extend that lead out into double digits. But yeah, I'm not one of those that's going to sit here in agreement with you and say this, there's a conspiracy. The Big 12 officiating is completely against OU and Texas. No, that's not the case, I don't think. But there are some head-scratching penalties that got called over the weekend in Stillwater that would make you think, like, okay, something it's not being called, both ways, essentially. And, there's 3 that really come to mind. The Makari Vickers pass interference on a 3rd down and 5 when you've got Oklahoma State, pinned down inside their own red zone. Rashad Owens pushes off. He drops the ball. So even if the flag is not thrown, you're still 4th down, and Oklahoma has to punt, giving Oklahoma really good field position around midfield. The second one, after that play, Brent Venables gets an unsportsmanlike conduct. Dylan Buckingham on Twitter actually posted a really good video on social media earlier today, basically showing, I think that the referee saw Brent Venables for maybe 1 second And from everything that we know about Brent Venables, I'm sure he didn't say something super over the top that would have warranted a flag being thrown like that. But yeah, flag was thrown immediately. And then Eddie Radosevich, friend of the program, actually posted a similar video of Mike Gundy earlier in the game going absolutely berserk on the field when Oklahoma State got called for illegal substitution, 12 men on the field. And he was causing a much bigger scene, throwing a temper tantrum than Brent Venables was. And the official kind of calms him down, tells him to back up a little bit. Let's play on. And then obviously the Drake Stoops assault that was in the corner of the end zone in the final drive. It's just, I posted it on Twitter right when it happened, Adam. I mean, the clip's gone viral. How in that moment, and again, it's Stillwater. You're a road favorite going into a hostile environment. We saw it in 2022 with Trayvon West not getting the call, similar type situation in the corner of the end zone. Anytime that you go on the road, you go into a rivalry game, you don't execute, you lose the turnover battle, you commit penalties, you can't execute. Oklahoma just simply wasn't good enough collectively as a team on Saturday to overcome all of those mistakes, and it came back to bite them.
And that's the story. Like, it's weak to be an OU fan out here and saying, oh, we would have won if this penalty had been, or this flag had been thrown against, the Drake Stoops non-call pass interference, or if the flag hadn't come out for Makari Vickers. I think that should have been offensive pass interference. Like, there's lots of bad calls. I'm sure that there were some that OSU fans are probably thinking, actually, I bet there's a lot of calls that OSU fans probably don't remember because they won the game. But if they had lost the game, they'd be looking at those calls. So OU has to be significantly better. This roster, if you're an OU fan, before the game, you look at it and you go, there's no reason that OU probably shouldn't win by 3 touchdowns, just based on roster talent alone. Not necessarily on the results coming into this game. But that's just the fact of the matter. When OU faces up against anyone in the Big 12, not named Texas, they're really 3 touchdowns better than pretty much everybody in the conference. But OU continues to shoot themselves in the foot. So if you say that, hey, they lost the game because of penalties, you're saying, well, this team, it doesn't play up to their potential. And that's really the reason that OU loses is, they just can't make the key plays when it matters. There's no complimentary football. The defense was a little bit slow getting started, but figured it out, mid second quarter or so, and really shut things down other than that 97-yard drive that was 35 yards worth of penalties that were just gifted to Oklahoma State. I think they were worn down at that point, so I don't fault them too much. But they can't play complimentary football. The offense can move the ball, but then stalls out for one reason or another with penalties or self-inflicted mistakes or just kind of a weird head-scratching play call here and there. And so it's like they can't get out of their own way. They're almost allergic to a 2-score lead, really, that we've seen ever since that Iowa State game.
Right. Well, Adam, let's look at this game starting chronologically. Obviously, we knew coming into this game, all of the focus on the OU defensive side of the football, the game plan was going to be limiting the rushing attack from Ollie Gordon. We knew that for Oklahoma State to win this football game for OU, you were going to force Alan Bowman to essentially play the best game of the season, be able to force some of those throws down the deep side of the field and be able to beat you through the air. And I thought that Casey Dunn and Mike Gundy put together a really good game plan. They came out throwing the football. They were aggressive. Oklahoma State kind of picked on Gentry Williams for the better part of the entire first quarter. Alan Bowman, I think, found Rashad Owens 5 times in that opening quarter. And obviously Rashad Owens, who I don't think many people outside of Oklahoma State fans truly knew that much about going into this game. He finishes with a season-high 10 catches, 136 yards, with a long of 31 to go along with it. And I just thought that this was something that Oklahoma really kind of surprised them coming out of the gate. I know that there were a lot of instances where Oklahoma State chose to isolate Owens on one side of the field, and they would, kind of a run-pass option. They would fake the run to Ollie Gordon, get Alan Bowman rolled out outside of the pocket, and be able to pick on Gentry Williams, in a sense, down the field with Rashad Owens. But you got to give Oklahoma State credit. Again, there were a lot of things, especially early on in this game, that, Oklahoma kind of some self-inflicted wounds. Obviously, Nick Anderson drops a wide-open pass downfield that probably results in a touchdown that puts OU up at the half. But, I mean, Adam, where do you want to start? Is it play calling? Is it turnovers? Is it penalties? I mean, what do we really want to chalk this up to? Because the last 2 weeks, Oklahoma's committed a total of 6 turnovers, 3 in each game. And you've lost a 1-score game in both of those contests. So I know that you want to give Kansas, you want to give Oklahoma State a little bit of credit because obviously they made, a fair share of the plays on their own. But we're coming off back-to-back losses where the only team that beat Oklahoma on those 2 Saturdays was Oklahoma.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of like the right words to describe that because I don't want to discredit Oklahoma State. Like they played well. I think they played probably like a B plus game and they still beat Oklahoma. But I can't think of too many like blunderous plays or calls that Oklahoma State had. There obviously was a trick play that ended up in an interception for Billy Bowman.
Interception. Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't know that there was that many plays that stood out to me where I was like, wow, Oklahoma State, bad play, bad execution, bad coaching, anything like that. They just kind of were there, I kind of think that's what Kansas was 2 weeks ago. They were just kind of there. They did their thing, kind of like K-State of old, where they don't make mistakes for as long as possible, and eventually the other team does, and they take advantage and they win the game. That's kind of what we saw from Oklahoma State. They were just there.
Yeah.
Oklahoma really was giving the ball away. And I think over the last 2 weeks, other than the Jaleel Farouk fumble at Kansas, I think almost all the turnovers have really just been more of giveaways than takeaway variety. And so it's just poor. It's you give the ball to the other team, you're not going to win like that.
I think you summed that up perfectly. Giveaways, not takeaways. Oklahoma essentially gifting the football to the other team, not giving them or really forcing them to take it away themselves. You talk about the direct snap to Javonte Barnes that results in a fumble. I'm not really sure what the play design was on it. We tried to get a little bit more information in the postgame about it, but obviously Javonte Barnes bobbles the direct snap. He tries to hand it over to Dylan Gabriel, who ends up fumbling. Oklahoma State
That looked like
recovers.
middle school, man. That looked like
Absolutely.
middle school.
And then you go to the first drive of the second half. Dylan Gabriel throws an interception on the first drive, which again, it's kind of a punt. Yes, he shouldn't have thrown the football. He had pressure in his face.
That play was so like I actually commented to the guy I was sitting next to because Brennan Thompson's on the field. Big alert there. They run a design play to him to kind of get him in rhythm. 2 plays later, I actually commented to the guy sitting next to me. I was like, they're going deep to him. And Dylan Gabriel needs to throw that ball way faster. I don't think it's an arm strength thing. He just needs to throw it like a second faster.
Well, I was just about to say, the Dylan Gabriel, the continuation of underthrowing deep balls. He underthrew 4, maybe even 5 deep balls on Saturday where Farouk beats his guy off the line of scrimmage. He's open down the field. He's got 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 yards of separation. And I don't know if it's Dylan just simply holding on to the football longer or if he's just not putting enough juice on it. But there were plays to be made down the field on Saturday, particularly with Jaleel Farouk. I mentioned the Nick Anderson drop. Oklahoma just simply didn't do themselves any favors in terms of executing in the big play passing game. No. But then you look at some of the penalties, Adam. Jaleel Farouk's got 2 false starts. Drake Stoops got a false start. Guys, it's football 101 back to junior high. Watch the football. That's
not even lining. He's not even lining up right, Farouk, on one of them.
No,
he lines up a yard past the ball. Like, how do you do that?
And I know that your offensive lineman, you've got a false start by Tyler Guyton. There's a couple of holding penalties over the course of the game. That's going to happen over the course of playing 75, 90 snaps. But the final turnover that was really just kind of the knife in the side for Oklahoma, all the way in the fourth quarter, 7:52 left. Oklahoma State's up 24-21. Oklahoma is driving, has an opportunity to take the lead going into the final stretch of this game, and Andrew Rames got a bad snap off of Dylan Gabriel's feet, shoots forward. Oklahoma State recovers on the OU 19, and Oklahoma defensively was able to limit them to a field goal. So job well done for Brent Venables' defense on Saturday. But Adam, here's the thing that drives me the most insane. I went back and watched this to try to track it a little bit. Oklahoma State went up 17-7 with 9:42 left in the second quarter and didn't score again until the 7:59 mark in the fourth quarter, and what was ultimately the 97-yard touchdown drive aided by the penalties that put them up by 3. After Oklahoma cut it to 17-14, the next 6 Oklahoma State possessions offensively were punt, turnover on downs, turnover on downs, turnover on downs, Billy Bowman interception. We always go back to what, Adam? Playing complementary football, both offense and defense, executing, feeding off one another. And the defense, Adam, I thought they played their ass off on Saturday. If you would have told me coming into this matchup that they were going to limit all to 137 yards or 139 yards on 33 carries, 4 yards and only 4 yards of carry and only 1 touchdown, Oklahoma actually ultimately ended up out-rushing Oklahoma State on Saturday. So I think that many people would have thought going into this game, seeing that stat line, that, okay, Oklahoma's probably winning by 2 scores at least on Saturday, but they just failed. They just failed to deliver the kill shot. And you always talk about the middle 8. Oklahoma, really kind of screwed things up in the middle 8 that ultimately put them in a bad position. But this is just something that we've seen from this offense over the last 2 weeks, Adam. It's not having a killer instinct to be able to go out there and deliver that final punch, to be able to put yourself up by double digits and really force the opposition into a situation where they've got to kind of get outside of their game plan a little bit. If Oklahoma goes up 10, 14 points on Saturday, you're feeding, you're basically forcing Oklahoma State to do something that's not their bread and butter offensively, where, they can't hand the ball off to Ollie Gordon, 35 times. They've got to be able to give the ball to Alan Bowman to really kind of play from behind to try to catch up. But yeah, it's just one of those deals, Adam, where defense played their ass off. Offense had a handful of possessions where they could have extended the lead to double digits, and they just simply couldn't get it done. That was the theme for me on Saturday. That's why Oklahoma lost.
I was just about to bring up the middle eight because we talked about that after the UCF game, and the OU really did not win that middle eight, something they had been so good at for the first 6 games of the year, and they didn't do it against Kansas. In fact, OU and Brent Venables picked up the ball and took it to the locker room without even trying anything against Kansas, and then he did it again against Oklahoma State here, where he could have called a timeout, he could have gotten the ball back, chose not to, chose to allow a Hail Mary pass to end the half. Just poor game management from Brent Venables, and I think that sends a message to the team when you're not aggressive like that. When you have an explosive, a tempo offense, it's perfect for getting the ball with 50 seconds left, and you choose not to do it. You choose to just say, let's just go to the half,
Yep.
And I think that sends a message whether or not you score on that possession or not. Like, you probably call some safe, conservative play calls that could be explosive, and you see what you get, but at least you try, and you say, hey, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to, go after them, and you don't do that. So I think there was plenty of game management issues from Brent Venables that are not, they're outside the play calling of Jeff Lebby. Take, for example, there was the drive there, the second to last one where OU gets the field goal. It's 3rd and 14 or something. You throw the into the end zone to Drake Stoops. It should have been a pass interference. It wasn't. But you sit around after that play and you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
You don't know if you're going to kick the field goal. You don't know if you're going to go for it on 4th and 14. You burn a timeout, which if you had that timeout after the 4th down that Drake Stoops was short of the sticks, you probably have 2 timeouts. You probably have a chance to get the ball back maybe with 11 seconds left. You have maybe a lateral play or something at that point, but you burn that timeout because you didn't know what you were doing. You have to know before that 3rd and 14 play, if this doesn't convert, are we kicking the field goal or are we going for it? You have to know. You can't just sit around and not know at that point. So there's a lot of issues with Brent Venables that we've seen over the last 2 games of his game management that I thought we were kind of done with after last year, but it's starting to rear its ugly head a little bit.
And I know that Joe John Finley is the special teams kind of, quote unquote coordinator. So, I mean, that obviously falls on him, but
should know a lot
sure,
about that,
absolutely. And, Brent, he's, captain of the ship. Ultimately, everything falls back on him. He took responsibility for it in the post game. But Adam, I do kind of want to get your thoughts on some personnel decisions and play calling, because this will kind of lead into the, the biggest, talking point coming out of this game. And that is Jeff Lebby as Oklahoma's offensive coordinator moving forward. Personnel decisions. Oklahoma at the running back position, Adam. Gavin Sawchuk, 13 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 8.5 yards a carry. Tawee Walker, 8 carries, 59 yards. That's 7.4 yards per carry. And here we are in critical crunch time scenario in the second half. You've got true freshman Dalen Smothers lined up at running back. On the final drive of the season, or of the game, Dalen Smothers is your running back. J.J. Hester, who hasn't played really any meaningful snaps all year long, he's in on a handful of possessions in at wide receiver. LV Bunkley Shelton, who hasn't really returned a punt at all in the biggest game of the year in Bedlam, in your arch rival on the road. You put him out there to return a kick and he muffs it. Thank God we recovered it. But just some of the personnel decisions, going back to the position coaches, DeMarco Murray, I think that when we sit back and we look at this season in its totality after the bowl game, ultimately whichever one Oklahoma ends up playing in, I think that you've got to do a serious look at each one of Oklahoma's position coaches on the offensive side of the football. Outside of Emma Jones, I'm very happy with what we've gotten from the wide receiver production. We might want to go over the false start, lining up properly, watching the football. They'll touch on that this week at practice. But you look at DeMarco Murray, the mismanagement of the running back room.
All season long.
All season long, not being able to settle in on one guy. Yes, I know that there's been some injuries. All 3 of the, your top bell cows have been hurt at one point, going all the way back from fall camp into, the current week 10 that we're in right now. And here we are, Gavin Sawchuk averaging over 8 a carry, Tawee Walker over 7 a carry. Yes, I know he's on one leg, but Oklahoma State could not stop you running the football. And we only had collectively between those 2 guys 21 carries.
And Dylan Gabriel wasn't, I don't think there was maybe but one design QB run, which was the weird sequence of after you get the turnover from Billy Bowman, you run with Tolly Walker, he picks up a first down, and then you run 3 straight running plays, of which one was that awkward Dylan Gabriel keeper that did nothing.
Second down and 13, fourth quarter, 5 minutes and 35 seconds left on the Oklahoma State 19. You're inside the red zone. You run a read option to the short side of the field that gets you 1 yard and puts you into third and long. And, ultimately the next play is the Drake Stoops one that'll be talked about for many, many years. But yeah, just the play calling in general. And we can use this as a transition into Jeff Lebby, because I think, Adam, I'm not as far down the road in terms of we need to seriously reconsider Jeff Lebby going forward, here on November 6th, not just for the rest of this season, but, going into the SEC in 2024. I'm not there yet. I thought that he called a pretty good game as a whole on Saturday. And as an offensive coordinator, you're always going to want to have 4 to 5 calls back, something that you wish you would have done a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, Adam, he can't dictate penalties. He can't dictate drops. Gavin Freeman dropping a slant. Nick Anderson dropping a deep ball down the sideline. Brennan Thompson dropping a 4th down and 5. There were certain plays within this game that if Oklahoma simply execute, whether it's finding the open receiver, it's a left tackle not getting whipped on a 3-man rush, and you find Austin Stogner wide open inside the 10-yard line, he walks in. Oklahoma's wins the football game. We're having a different conversation, but you go back to the first quarter, 5 minutes left. After Nick Anderson 48-yard reception, we try to get too cute, which is something that we've talked about for the better part of the last 3 weeks with Jeff Lebby. Javonte Barnes bobbles a direct snap, tries to hand it to Dylan Gabriel, who fumbles, careless with the football. OU turns it over. 3rd and 8 on the Oklahoma State 27. Second quarter, we call a swing pass to Drake Stoops on 3rd and 8. Austin Stogner gets beat by Xavier Benson, and we'll touch on Stogner here in just a little bit. Results in a 6-yard loss, backs Oklahoma up into a deep, deep field goal territory. Next play, Zach Schmidt misses a 50-yard field goal. Fast forward.
Why they even attempted that.
I don't know why. And I think that we've kind of touched on this one, Adam. 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It's 2nd and 13 on the OSU 19. The middle of the field has been wide open all day. Drake Stoops, we wasted a career performance from this kid on Saturday. You've been torching this Cowboys secondary all over the field for the better part of 4 quarters. And your play call on 2nd and 13 is to do a quarterback read option where he keeps it and gets blown up 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Thankfully, he was able to run over the edge guy and get back to the line of scrimmage. But for me, it's just situational play calling that I have a huge issue on Jeff Lebby with. And there's a lot of times where I think he tries to get too cute, and there's a lot of instances where we're being aggressive. We've got our foot on the gas pedal, and we just, instead of keeping it simple, stupid, we try to do too many things that we end up getting ourselves in the way. Penalties, direct snaps, turnovers, things like that. And you just can't do that. You're too good of a football team. You're a much more talented football team than Kansas and Oklahoma State to think that you have to line up and run this cute little, little league bullshit. Just line up, give the ball to your running backs, run the ball down their damn throat, and let's move on.
Jeff Lebby is the most hated man in the state of Oklahoma right now, for sure. If you're watching live, you have opinions on Jeff Lebby, put them in the comments. We'll throw them up on the screen here and discuss a little bit. With Jeff Lebby, I've slept on it, twice now, and it's not great.
Adam, I'm sorry. We didn't even talk about the 4th and 5 play. The 3-yard out route to Stoops.
There's some interesting theories out there around people saying that, it was spotted at, 3 yards out, and then they moved it back to 5 yards. And I think some people said, the play call was already in. And so therefore it was right at 3 yards was where Drake Stoops was. Should he have ran that a little bit, longer? Probably. I think if he did, I think actually the defender probably had a better angle on that. So it probably wouldn't have been completed. But yeah, that play call is just not good. You need to at least trust Dylan Gabriel to do more than just roll out, hit the one guy on the one route there.
Adam,
I don't think that's a 4th down play.
Adam, my last sentence on this, and then I'll throw it back over to you. Talk Jeff Lebby, big picture. The middle of the field was wide open all day, and instead of giving Dylan Gabriel on 4th and 5 the opportunity to scan the entire field, your play call is to take away half the field and throw a pass where your receiver doesn't even run a route to the first down line. I just absolutely hated the play call. That's why we're in the position we're in.
And Brent said on his coach's show this evening that there's a Rolodex of better plays that they had that they should have run in that scenario. So after he's had a chance to review it a little bit, he agrees with OU on that. So I'm sure there's been some not fun conversations with Jeff Lebby there.
And we had a timeout.
Yeah, I should have used it. I mean, it would have been nice to have two of them, like we talked about earlier, but you just got to be more organized. That's the details that he's talking about that he's not adhering to it and fixing. And, the middle of the field, really, I think Drake Stoops is probably the only guy that's really attacking the middle of the field. Austin Stogner is just non-existent as a receiver. Now, I know a lot of people were not fans of his blocking on certain wide receiver screens, but you also have to give him credit and his due for that Gavin Sawchuk touchdown run because he sealed the safety on that and launches him into the secondary there. So he did some good things, but yeah, he's just not effective.
I'm not with you on that. I mean, with Austin Stogner, why? And why are we running so much 11 personnel? One running back, one tight end, and there's so many instances, Adam, over the course of the game, and I'll touch on the final series here in a minute, where you've got Austin Stogner split out wide. He's not mobile enough to be a consistent pass catcher, and he's not athletic enough to expect him to consistently be able to block outside in the screen game when you've got a defensive back coming down full speed. He got blown up or whiffed on his man 3 to 4 times and put Oklahoma behind the chains on a couple different instances. And, Adam, we talk about the personnel choices, why certain guys are playing in key situations of the game. You're in 2-minute drill, less than 2 minutes to go. You've got to go 75 yards to ultimately try to tie this thing up or take the lead. In our personnel group, we've got Austin Stogner lined up out wide running the routes.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense whatsoever.
Yeah. I do think that there's an element of kind of like last year in the quarterback room where people are like, we're frustrated with Dylan Gabriel. And you start to see Davis Bevel because Gabriel gets hurt. And then you realize, I guess we should appreciate Gabriel a little bit more. I kind of think there's some similarities there with Stogner in terms of he's probably a net negative in most scenarios, but I just don't think there's anyone behind him whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But that's more of that's a position you can take off the field. You can play 10 and 20 personnel. I don't think there's 20 personnel in Jeff Lebby's playbook, but there's got to be 10. That was a big part of the Baylor offense was 4 wide receivers split out as far as you could put them. You spread out the defense, and if they don't go out and cover those receivers man-to-man out there, you can you can toss your wide receiver screens, you can run up the middle because you just got everybody spread out. And then the tempo works a little bit more in your favor, I think, because they're having to cover so much more territory, but we're not getting the Baylor offense that we signed up for.
Unless you're faking injuries. I've never seen so many cramps on a 70-degree day in the month of November.
There was 4 or 5 of them at least, yeah.
But I think you make a really good point. When you look at Oklahoma's personnel group, what do they do well? The tight end position has been a weak link on this offense all season long. Yes, I know that when Austin Stogner or Blake Smith is lined up on the line of scrimmage outside the tackle, they can do some good things in the blocking, but when you've got to go 75 yards, and we saw this over the course of the game where Oklahoma was able to spread things out. The first play of the last drive, Adam, when we were in hurry-up mode, we spread it out 5 wide. You get one of your biggest plays of the day. Drake Stoops wide open over the middle. Set yourself up. You got all the momentum in the world. And here we go. We line right back up, and we've got Austin Stogner out there in the slot on a few plays back-to-back, and I just simply don't get it. But again, I know I'm not making the money. Jeff Lebby has forgot more about football than I will ever know. I admit that. But a lot of this stuff to me is common sense. Why you would choose to do that in that situation, to me, is not putting your guys in the best position to be able to go out there and execute and have success in the times where it matters the most.
I think it's going to work a lot better next year when you have Davin Mitchell out there at tight end because he is a guy that can play like a wide receiver with a lot more speed, but he'll keep that linebacker on the field. And that's part of the tempo element of it is, he can go and play wide receiver. Now he can come in and be a blocker, an effective blocker in the box for your run schemes. And you keep that linebacker from subbing out and getting a safety on the field. So there's that aspect of it. And it's going to look a lot different next year, which begs the question, is Jeff Lebby going to be on this staff next year? And I think by and large, we asked on Twitter on Sunday, we gave everyone a chance to sleep on it and say, hey, is there anything that you could see from this offense over the next 3 games that would make you feel comfortable or okay, maybe not thrilled, but okay with Jeff Lebby returning in 2024? I expected to get completely 100% negative. There's nothing he can do. And we did get a lot of that. I did see some level-headed people though that said like, hey, score 50 points a game. At least there were some reasonable benchmarks that they had. So I think there's some fans that are like, hey, we're willing to give him a chance. And I think Jeff Lebby is still really good. He's only a few things away from, I think, being a pretty good, like a really great offensive coordinator. Now, we have heard some rumblings ever since that SMU game. Credit to Crimson captain Matt over there that wrote this really way back after the SMU game and the Art Briles situation, that there were probably, and I'm paraphrasing, so not his words, it's linked in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast, that original article, but there are some donors maybe that are kind of in the corner of, hey, let's part ways with Jeff Lebby. And there's been some more articles that Matt has posted on crimsoncaptain.com of recent, kind of along those lines. You'll have to check that out for yourself. But I don't know, Tyler. I'm still not of the belief that you really part ways with Jeff Lebby in the offseason.
No, not even close. Now, again, over the course of the first year and a half, Jeff Lebby's been calling plays at Oklahoma. Have there been some sour moments? Yes, absolutely. And again, I think that he's a good offensive coordinator, but like we talked about, I think that the problem is situationally some of the play calling choices that he makes in those critical crunch time moments. It's kind of a pattern where he kind of shrivels up in some of those moments and doesn't necessarily call what's been working for Oklahoma over the course of the game up until that point. But I think George Stoyer reported that Jeff Lebby still has 3 more years left on his contract at Oklahoma. He's all the way through the end of the 2026 season.
I would have thought coordinators were like year to year still.
No, because I think that was one of the big deals when they were actually able to pull him from Ole Miss, as he was able to sign kind of a longer, bigger contract that was, going to give him some more money guaranteed, but also, a full 5 years in Norman to be able to do what he does. But as we sit here right now, Adam, I think that Jeff Lebby needs to be back in 2024. Now, obviously, we'll see how we feel over the course of the final 3 games of the season. If we're still running into these same type of moments, these same blunders where the personnel decisions are question making, then again, that's more position group talk as well. But just some of the play calling in crunch time scenarios, if we're still having this conversation after the conclusion of the 2023 season, then I think that the conversation can be had a little bit more realistically. But you've got to look at this big picture, Adam. What Oklahoma is doing on the recruiting trail is not something that Oklahoma has done in the better part of 15 years, specifically on the defensive side of the football. But when you look at how it applies to Jeff Lebby, it starts with the quarterback position. You've got Jackson Arnold for year 1 in the SEC next year, but you've also got Michael Hawkins and you've also got Kevin Sperry on the hook for the 2024-2025 classes moving forward, and some really good skills.
Don't disrespect Zerberg.
Okay,
I don't even know his name. Okay. So,
but at the same time, where I'm going with that is that there's so much momentum on the recruiting trail. You've got so many, top recruits that are going to be coming to Norman over the next couple of years. I think that at the bare minimum, you have to give him 1 full year with Jackson Arnold. That's his guy. That's who he brought. That was his, his crown jewel coming to Oklahoma. I think you got to give him an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm not super worried about Jackson Arnold potentially transferring like some people are, because I just don't think that I don't think Jeff Lebby would end up anywhere that Arnold would want to go. And I feel like I'm going to be like Lincoln Riley a little bit here when I say this, but I think we're pretty close to breaking through on some of these things. Like, just think about it this way. Let me ask you this: offense better this year or last year, Tyler?
Oh, I'm going to say better this year. I think it's better this year, but there's just been more critical mistakes, especially over the last couple of weeks. This offense was fantastic through the Texas game. Outside of the SMU performance, which, I mean, you still, Oklahoma found a way to win that game late in the second half. They made those plays, Dylan Gabriel specifically, to get the win for Oklahoma. But yeah, I think it's got to be 2023. The offense has been better.
Yeah, last year it felt like Eric Gray and not much else. It was kind of like up and down in the passing game. And now it feels like our passing game is fairly consistent every game, as long as Jeff Lebby allows them to play. And then the running game has been more up and down. But at least you have a reliable passing game, which is, I think, more important. So I do think this year's better. I think that's partly because execution is better. And I think it's partly because the players are used to the system a little bit more. So I think that's something that you'll see increase and continue to get better going into 2024. You'll have a quarterback that I think will be well prepped just by being a year into college. We know he's a 5-star. We know he's got talent. We've seen some of the things he's able to do. But I think he'll also be able to improvise more and do some of the things that we saw from past former great Sooner quarterbacks that can help overcome potentially poor play calling. But I think Jeff Lebby will continue to improve as well. So I'm not on board of like, let's just fire him unless there's like something that's like a no-brainer out there. I haven't really seen the no-brainer hire potentially out there. I think the Ryan Grubb talk of Washington, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me just yet. I'm not sure why he would do that. He might be closer to a head coaching job than he is to becoming an offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. So
I'd like to go back and do some research on him without Michael Penix.
That's fair. Yeah.
Offense.
That's fair. Yeah. You want somebody that's going to be able to bridge, different quarterbacks, although he might have a better quarterback in Jackson Arnold than Michael Penix. We'll find out. But
what are your thoughts on Jackson Arnold moving forward? Obviously, you still have somewhat of an outside chance. Ultimately, Oklahoma's going to have a lot of help. Oklahoma has to win out first and foremost to make it back to Arlington in the Big 12 championship. But what are your thoughts on Jackson Arnold moving forward and his role over the course of the final stretch of this season?
I think it doesn't. I don't think it changes unless you're in a blowout scenario and he comes in for mop-up duty. I don't think it changes because that sends a message to your team of like, hey, this season's kind of just done. Let's get this guy in here that can get some experience for next year. Like if I'm Drake Stoops, I'm sure he loves Jackson Arnold, but if I'm Drake Stoops, I'm probably a little pissed because this is my final year. I want to go out and at least continue to win and have a chance for that Big 12 championship game. If things fall the right way for you, you've lost the opportunity to control your own destiny there, but I want this team at full strength. And I think we're all, as OU fans, have kind of settled in on the fact that like Dillon Gabriel is the best quarterback this year. He's got tons of experience and what you want there. And so I think you stick with the way things are going, but give Dillon Gabriel more opportunities. I'd say, like we talked about, less of the laterals and the screen passes and give him more opportunities to throw it down the field and make the play for this team rather than saying like, hey, let's make this great play call to one receiver, and that's all he has as an option. Let's give Dillon Gabriel more opportunity to step up and be the guy, in my opinion, on offense.
Adam, I do want to add one more bit of positivity on the Bedlam game before we transition over to West Virginia and ultimately get to our bets for the week. There was a good thing, I think, a couple of good things that came out of the performance in Stillwater on Saturday. One is Kip Lewis. Team leading 15 tackles. That's one of the best linebacking performances I've seen in quite some time. And again, moving forward, if Danny Stutzman's back this week, it needs to be Danny Stutzman and it needs to be Kip Lewis side by side. Jaron Canick, really good player. He's still finding himself, trying to get more comfortable in Brent Venables' scheme, but also trying to get more comfortable playing the linebacker position as a whole. Your two best linebackers are Stutzman and Lewis. And going into this week with the West Virginia team that's coming into town that likes to, dominate on the, on the line of scrimmage, likes to run the football with a couple of those backs and, Garrett Green at the quarterback position, you've got to have your best linebackers on the field. And I think that, make no mistake about it, Kip Lewis is that dude. I cannot wait to see what this kid's going to look like over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. Adam, he's playing at 210 pounds.
He's already third on the team in tackles. He came in fifth in the Bedlam, which will surprise me, and he's already up to third. And I was impressed with him. I was impressed with Kobe McKenzie. And I still want Jaron Canick to play. I think there's playing time there for him.
I do.
Just by a matter of Kip Lewis being fifth on the team in tackles, there's playing time for Canick to continue to develop him because at some point he's going to have to step in for Danny Stutzman when he graduates. Or
I wouldn't mind seeing, call me crazy, Adam, but I wouldn't mind seeing Jaron Canick take a few snaps at tight end.
We can't do much worse blocking than
I'm deadly
than
serious.
Stogner,
He's a couple inches shorter than Stogner, maybe a few pounds lighter. Much better athletes, got good hands, played quarterback in high school. I'm just saying.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Maybe.
And one last thing, too. That was the best running game performance that we saw from Oklahoma all season long. We just didn't do it enough. But you had to have liked what you saw from the running back positions with Gavin Sawchuk, with Tawee Walker. And I think that the offensive line, outside of a couple of plays, I think that they played one of their better games of the season. This was the first game, and since I can't remember when, Adam, that we had the same 5 starting offensive linemen for all 60 minutes on Saturday. I think Bill Bedenbaugh has found his starting 5, and this is who we're going to roll with over the back half of the season.
I know there were injuries, but it shouldn't take till game 9 to figure that out. That's frustrating. It continues the theme and the fuel and the narrative for those people that say, why does it take so long for Bedenbaugh every year? Why does he not get any big-time recruits? Is he really that good of a coach? Like, he does have lots of guys that go in the NFL and become multi-year starters, sometimes decade-long starters in the NFL, but it's frustrating. Like, you can't, no other position group do you go, the wide receivers, they'll have it figured out by halfway through the year. Like, we just kind of give that a pass on the offensive line.
Well, and I think the pressure's ramping on him a lot more, and I think that Oklahoma fans are going to continue to get a little bit more upset with Bill moving forward because of where we're going into the SEC. If you watch that Alabama LSU game, if you watch that Georgia Missouri game, Oklahoma's offensive line, one, they're not playing at the type of level that's going to give us, success in the SEC next year. But number two, we don't have the guys in that room across the board.
Caden Green's the one SEC lineman there.
Absolutely. And Tyler Guyton, when he puts it all together, when he's consistent, he's an SEC tackle. Make no mistake about it, but he needs to come back another year.
Man, I don't know. I feel like he's the type of guy that just projects so high that he'll go in the first round anyway.
Oh, he's an absolute freak. I mean, he's a specimen that not too many. If he ends up declaring for the draft and he shows up to the NFL Combine, he's going to put up his measurables, and he's going to put up some numbers in testing that he might sneak into the late first round, maybe early second round. But if you're able to convince him to come back, where you can put Guyton and you can put Sexton at your tackles. You've got Caden Green at one of the guard positions. They're going to have to find another center to replace Raheem. Josh Bates obviously is the guy that could be doing that next year. Troy Everett's another one. But I just think that coming into this year, the offensive line was a position where we thought there was going to be some continuity, where going into the year, you were going to be able to just kind of hit the ground running from game one. You had Rouse with all that experience from Stanford. You had Guyton. You had Savion Byrd coming back. Andrew Raym, in his final year at Oklahoma. You thought that you were going to be able to basically be successful running the football from week one on. And it's taken us, 2.5 months into the season before we've really been able to put together a starting 5 unit that it looks like we're going to roll with moving forward.
Let's talk a little bit about West Virginia. Just announced that the Anthracite jerseys are making their comeback for this game at night, which is something we all want to see. I think it's probably the right time to give a little bit of energy, something to be excited and positive about for this team. I'm sure they have different mindsets than we do as fans, and I'm hopeful that Brent Venables is doing a good job of just working that mentality for the team. But I think this could be something that gives a little bit of juice, a little bit of excitement to a program that definitely needs something to help finish the year strong. So the team's coming out in something new. I think the fans probably should come out in something new too. It's getting a little cooler outside. Who has some good pullovers that maybe some fans should get? How about Red and West?
Oh man, you want to talk about not just style, but when you talk about flexibility, comfortability, it doesn't get any better than Red and West. When you're getting dressed on Saturday, folks, when you're putting together that game day outfit on Friday night, maybe early Saturday morning, Red and West, it doesn't get any better than that. We've talked about it time and time again. We've had the Nike, we've had the Jordan, the Peter Millar, the Polo, the Southern, Vineyard Vines. It doesn't get much better than Red and West. I'm going to have it on Saturday. I'm going to have it, I've already got a couple of things from Red and West that's coming in the mail here in the next week that I'm going to be sporting out in Provo, as well as the TCU game on Black Friday. Go stock up on Red and West, especially with the holiday season coming up. Some good stocking stuffers for some relatives sporting that crimson and cream. Go buy Red and West.
I saw them at Metro Shoe Warehouse the other day. Yeah. So they're in some brick and mortar too, but redandwest.com, best place to get some new gear for game days there. So West Virginia, though, let's just not spend a whole lot of time here. West Virginia, they came off a really impressive win over BYU. BYU started their backup quarterback. They can't run the ball whatsoever. I think OU actually wins that game in Provo fairly easily. I'm not super worried about that one, but I don't know. This is kind of just a weird game in my opinion, but what could OU do to impress you?
Well, first, number one, you got to get healthy. That's the biggest thing for me on Saturday. You've got to get Danny Stutzman back. You would hope that Tawi Walker, another week of rest, that ankle's going to be healed up a little bit more. That's a big one for me. I want to see a lot more of Kip Lewis. Obviously, we've talked about that. That was the one of the biggest shining moments for Oklahoma and Stillwater on Saturday. So more Kip Lewis. I want to see more Robert Spears-Jennings. I think that your safety rotation moving forward needs to be Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, Reggie Pearson, and Robert Spears-Jennings. I know that I know that I know that Key Lawrence has done a lot of good things. He's played a lot of football. He's that veteran leader in the back end of the defense, but I don't really want to see too much more of Key Lawrence. If I'm being honest, I think that those other 4 guys have a much higher ceiling, and you're also going to have 3 of those 4 guys for more than just this year moving forward. So, but yeah, Kip Lewis, the safety rotation's got to improve. The pass rush needs to become a thing again. This is going to be a really interesting game plan that Brent's going to have to put together on Saturday, because what West Virginia likes to do offensively, Garrett Green is not as good of a passer as Jason Bean from Kansas is, But with what Kansas likes to do in running the football with a couple of backs, also with Jason Bean's legs and how dynamic he can be once he gets outside the pocket, West Virginia's offense is the worst passing team in the Big 12 by a mile, but they're the third best rushing team in the Big 12 at 218 yards a game, 31 points per game. Pretty good offensive line. They've only given up 9 sacks per year. So if you're Brent Venables on Saturday, if you've got Stutzman back, this is going to be a really big game for him, because from a leverage standpoint, from the schemes, reading your keys, situational football, you've got to get lined up properly against this West Virginia attack, because they can do a lot of things that can present problems if you're not fundamentally sound. They've got a really good running back tandem that's going to be coming down here from Morgantown, obviously, in C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White. C.J. Donaldson's kind of been the bell cow for this group over the course of the year, but Jaheim White, in that 37-7 win last Saturday against BYU, he went for over 130 yards and a touchdown. So multiple guys that can hurt you if you're not defending the run on Saturday. And you just hope that Oklahoma continues that aggressiveness that we've seen over the course of the first 6 weeks going into Texas, to where you force West Virginia to beat you from the pocket. Stop the run. That's obviously number one thing, but force West Virginia into those, second and long, third and long, obvious passing downs. That's where I think Oklahoma finds success on Saturday. If they're giving up 4, 5, 6 runs a pop, it's going to be a long Saturday in Norman that night, and you're going to find yourself in another game like what we saw for the last 2 weeks.
I'm going to agree with questioning there that the live chat that we just threw on the screen, execution being the key word offensively. Yep. There's going to be opportunities for this team to go out, play complementary football after your defense gets you a stop, to go up by a score, to take the lead, or to go over 2 scores in the second half there, or to start the second half, potentially like get back to playing really great football in the middle 8. We're about to do score predictions here in a second. So if you're in the live chat or you're watching on YouTube, let us know your score predictions. We'll throw those up on the screen. But yeah, I think that's what I want to see. I want to see some high level execution from this offense. Don't put yourself in a position, because you have far superior talent than West Virginia. Don't put yourself in a position where it comes down to, what is Jeff Lebby going to call on 3rd and 8 here? Just be better. Like, do better on second down, so it doesn't matter that you even are in a third down situation where we have to rely on Jeff Lebby. That's the signal of a good offense, in my opinion, especially one that's got far superior players. That comes down to execution. That comes down to not having what we call those giveaways, not takeaways. I can live with a takeaway where maybe, someone just hits a receiver so hard and the ball pops free. You can kind of live with that. You don't love it. But the giveaways, that's going to kill your team, where you're just gifting it to the other team like we've seen over the last 2 weeks. So not necessarily a fan there. Anything else on West Virginia before we talk about score predictions?
Well, West Virginia's defense, stylistically, I don't think that this is a very good matchup for Oklahoma, because you look at Oklahoma's struggling on the offensive side of the football the last 2 weeks against Kansas and OSU. Statistically, West Virginia is a much better defense than what Oklahoma's gone up against the last couple of weeks, particularly on the defensive line. West Virginia gets creative. They do a lot of different stunts, with those defensive linemen. The front 7 is actually pretty good. They're only giving up 24 points per game. If Oklahoma's going to have success on Saturday, we've said it time and time again, it's going to be heavily reliant upon the arm of Dylan Gabriel on Saturday and being able to make those big plays down the field. Hopefully that's something that they're working on this weekend, because I'm not sure how effective the running game is going to be against this Mountaineer front 7. You would hope that they found something in Stillwater that they can build upon, especially having that continuity with those 5 offensive linemen. They can move forward this week with that. But make no mistake about this. Tawi Walker, Gavin Sawchuk, that's 1A, 1B. That's who you should be going with moving forward. And Dylan Gabriel's going to be on him in those critical situations to make those clutch plays down the field. And you just hope that Jeff Lebby comes out aggressive and he keeps his foot on the gas pedal over the course of 4 quarters.
Absolutely.
What's
Tyler,
Kevin saying?
Lebby has an attitude problem is what Kevin's telling us in the live chat there.
Accountability problem as well.
Maybe. Tyler, what's your score prediction for OU versus West Virginia? 6 p.m. on Fox.
Okay, I'm taking off my homer glasses here. Surely Oklahoma's not going to revert back to what we were a year ago, where we're going to lose 3 consecutive games. I wouldn't think that that's going to happen. We're coming back. It's a night game. You're wearing the alternate uniforms. The fact that this game is going to be played at night under the lights, I think that's good for this team. I think it's good for this fan base. It should be a really good home atmosphere on Saturday night. And I think that this is the week. Again, we talked about it last week, coming off the loss to Kansas, how's Oklahoma going to bounce back? And I thought for the most part, they bounced back and played very well defensively. The offense just let them down for the second consecutive week. But again, you're coming back home against a bad Mountaineer secondary. I think Oklahoma gets back on track here. I don't feel confident at it at all. But actually, I'm going to go with my gut here. I'm going to say West Virginia 33, Oklahoma 31.
Wow.
Call me crazy. I got to see it. I got to see it to believe it. I know BYU's not a good football team, but West Virginia ran it down their throat last week in Morgantown.
Yeah, I can't take too much stock in how some of these new programs to the Big 12 are performing against teams that have been in the Big 12 for years because there is an adjustment period there, and I don't think BYU is actually that good. So I've got OU winning 31-24, a one-possession game. That makes me a little bit nervous, but I do have a lot of confidence in this defense still, especially a team in West Virginia that is not going to be very effective throwing. Garrett Green only completing about 53% of his passes. So I'm not super worried about what they're going to be able to do defensively. I think they'll get theirs running the ball, but again, this defense, you're going to have to put together a lot of drives, really. They're not going to give up a ton of big plays, especially with a threat, passing the ball in Garrett Green. He's a very effective runner, a very good player. He's dangerous. He beat us last year. So I'm not trying to slide him. He certainly is capable, but this defense is also capable, and they're also improved off of last year. It really just comes down to, is the offense going to execute? Are they going to take advantage of the opportunities that the defense is giving them and play complementary football there? I'm not sure yet. I'd like to think that it's 31-17 and West Virginia scores a garbage time touchdown that makes it look closer than it is, but I think this is more like a dogfight where OU holds on. 31-24 is my final score. So,
Adam, last little bit here on West Virginia's defense. Some of the games that they played so far this year, their defense has given up 28, 48, 41, 38, and yeah, that's it. So Oklahoma, if they're firing on all cylinders, they should be able to get their fair share of points. If Oklahoma doesn't surpass 30 on Saturday, yeah, we might be coming back here next week with a even more conversation on Jeff Lebby. But players got to go out and execute. Make no mistake about that. Jeff Lebby can call the plays. It's up to the offensive line to block. It's up to Dylan Gabriel to hit those receivers down the field, catch the football, make some plays after the catch, and let's go out there and win a football game on Saturday. You have no choice.
Yeah, no choice. Let's wrap it up with our bet segment. If you are new to this or haven't followed along throughout the season, we do 5 best bets every week. Kind of a little competition between Tyler and I. Tyler has not won it yet. We're on season 4 of the Mainline Podcast. Hasn't won in any season, but he's in the lead now. He had a great week, went 4-1. Last week I went only 2-3. So he's taken I think a game and a half lead on me overall for the year coming down the stretch here. So that means Tyler will go first with his first bet of, I guess, week 11 at this point.
Jeez, it's almost over. Pick number 1 for me, Adam, staying in the Big 12. Texas Tech traveling on the road up to Lawrence to take on Kansas. Lance Leipold's team is on a heater right now. Couple big wins. Obviously, you beat Oklahoma at home, and you go up to Ames, Iowa, and knock off the Cyclones. Kansas, I wish I didn't have the half-point hook here. Kansas currently favored by 3.5, but Texas Tech is a much different football team on the road as opposed to when they're playing at home. So for this reason, give me the Jayhawks to cover the 3.5 here.
Yeah, game is in Lawrence, you said?
Yes.
Okay, I like that one, yeah. My number 1, I'm going to App State at Georgia State. Mountaineers, not the same program that they used to be ever since Eli Drinkwitz and Scott Satterfield left. So they're going on the road. Again, just not liking the road team here, not liking where the program is. Georgia State's got a dynamic running team duo there in their backfield between the quarterback and the running back Marcus Carroll. And Mountaineers don't have a very good rush defense whatsoever. So give me Georgia State to cover the 2.5 there.
I like it. Nobody bets on the lower tier teams in college football more than Adam Jacquez. If
it works.
Follows along here,
it
does. It does. Pick number 2 for me, going out to the SEC. Alabama traveling on the road to Kentucky to take on the Wildcats. Alabama coming off of a really nice win at home over LSU. Currently, Alabama is a 6.5-point favorite, first half line. And I think that Alabama's found something. They've kind of found their offensive identity. Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator, has done an extremely good job with Jalen Milroe, kind of catering that offense to Jalen's skill set. And for this reason, I think Alabama's going to go into Lexington, and I think that they're going to cover the 6.5 number in the first half on Saturday.
I like that one. My number 2.
You're welcome.
You got to love Big Ten betting the under. I'm going Northwestern, traveling to Madison, take on the Badgers there. under 42.5. Maybe Tanner Mordecai returns for this game, but even then, the Derry raid has just not been really all that great all year. So they're still figuring things out there in Madison. I think there's going to be a pretty low scoring affair here.
Death, taxes, Big 12 unders. We're going to we'll put that unders on a team. Big 10 unders. Sorry about that. Pick number 3 for me. I'm going to go out to the Pac-12 in this. Arizona traveling up here to take on Colorado. Over under on this matchup set at 54.5. I was in Boulder on Saturday night watching Colorado. Defensively, Colorado is improving a little bit, but I think that this is going to be an instance where Arizona is going to have a pretty dominant advantage on the skill position on offense, and I think the Arizona's quarterback is really kind of an under-the-radar type player in that conference. So for this reason, I expect Shedeur Sanders and that Buffalo offense to get me at least 20. So give me the over 54.5 out here in Boulder, Colorado on Saturday.
Dion's almost gifting Sean Lewis to somebody as a great offensive coordinator the way he's treating him right now, because no way that Sean Lewis returns to Boulder, whether by his choice or by Dion's, in my opinion.
We'll see.
My number 3, take another under here. I just like the number, 49.5. Virginia Tech traveling up to Chestnut Hill to take on Boston College, a team that I think has a good quarterback in Castellanos, but not necessarily the most dynamic offense for either team here. They're going to run the ball a lot. It's going to be a little bit cold up there in Boston, so give me the under on 49.5.
Pick number 4 for me, staying in the Pac-12, Utah traveling up to Seattle to take on Washington. Over under on this, kind of crazy, same 54.5. I think that this is going to be a high-scoring affair. And when you look at Utah's defense, yes, they kind of found their footing. They kind of got back on track last week. But I think that Michael Penix is just simply too good with this wide receiver talent to go around him. And I think that Utah is going to score some points as well. So give me the over 54.5 out there in Washington.
My number 4, I'm taking Texas -6.5 in the first half against TCU. I don't think TCU is very good. I'm not sure how good Texas is with Malik Murphy. Maybe we see Quinn Ewers return for this game potentially, but either way, Texas has been pretty solid, at least in the first half recently, and then they kind of don't close the door in the second half. So I'll take the first half line there.
You need them to lose. Oklahoma fans, you need them to lose.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. Adam, I'm going to round this out here with the team that we cover and we cheer and root for. West Virginia coming to Oklahoma. Night game in Norman. West Virginia is a 12.5-point dog on the road. Give me the Mountaineers to stay within the 12.5.
Oh, let's hope you're wrong there. My number 5, I'm not really sure exactly where to go. I think
I don't know what you're doing here.
My typical game is go take the under on the Iowa. That got taken off the board. It was already like 29.5 anyway, so it was crazy low. But I mean, it still would have hit, in my opinion. I'm taking USC on the road here, plus 14.5. I kind of like that number at Oregon. I think Oregon is the best team in the Pac-12 and at this point, but I don't know. How many times has Lincoln Riley been beat by that many points with the dynamic offense that he has? I wonder if there's a little bit more juice for the defensive staff there and the defensive players for USC. Not that they're going to suddenly realize their potential, but I don't know if you saw this video that was coming out of Alex Grinch coaching up the team. He went to put his arm up, 1, 2, 3, finish, whatever type thing in their huddles, and like nobody put their arm up. Everybody just kind of walked off. Away. So I wonder if there's a little bit of juice or energy of someone like Brian Odom, who's co-defensive coordinator now, if the team rallies a little bit more effectively there. But just having Caleb Williams and being able to keep it within 2 touchdowns, I think that's somewhat reasonable. Now they could totally implode, but I'll take the Trojans plus 14.5. I don't want to root for USC, but at least I can root for them to lose, but keep it close, I guess.
Oregon blowout, 20 plus.
Hey, if I'm 4-1 and that's my one loss, I will gladly take that. But haven't been 4-1 all year, so
I wouldn't know that feeling. So
that's true. Great week.
Get us out of here, Adam.
We will see how things turn out this week. Thanks everyone for joining in. I know we had some new people in the chat. Sean said thanks for turning on the notification bell. We appreciate that. If you enjoyed this, check out the podcast. It's available anywhere you listen to podcasts, and we will see everyone again next week for the next episode of the Mainline Podcast.
Please win.